Hello everyone, welcome to Mindspeak on Herald Global. I am Saimik Sen. Joining us today, a very renowned wildlife photographer and a tiger conservationist, Dr. Latika Nath. Welcome to Herald Global. I would like to begin by asking you, how difficult was it for you to proceed in this line of work, especially when you come from a family background of medical? Your father was in AIMS. So how difficult was it?
So my father wore two hats. One was that of a medical doctor, but the other and equally important was that of being a wildlife conservationist and an advisor to the government of India on wildlife conservation.
Okay.
So I grew up around people who were either medical doctors or, the country's leading environmental conservationists at that time.
Okay.
So it wasn't a very difficult decision for me. And something that a lot of people would understand came naturally to me because of the time I spent with my dad.
Okay.
But there was, of course, a lot of opposition that somebody like me was planning to go into the field and do the kind of work that I wanted to do. So those were tougher decisions.
You developed a very keen interest for tigers and snow leopards at the very initial stage of your career. How these animals are so special? Why are they so special to you?
Okay, so my grandparents lived in Kashmir, and I spent a lot of time, going to them and call Kashmir my home. And therefore, the interest in the snow leopard, because that was the big cat that was around there. And of course, Dachigam National Park was just a few kilometers from the house. So I would spend a lot of my time going into the park right from when I was a really small baby.
Sure.
So that was the interest in the snow leopards and the hangul and the black bear.
Okay.
The tiger interest started because I think the first time I went into the wild was when I was a few weeks old, really. And every weekend we would be out in the wild. My father would, be out for either doing photography or fishing or hunting or one of those things, which at that time were legal.
Okay.
And then we would just, every winter would be, hunting trip on the Brahmaputra or with my uncle in Assam or with my dad, in a camp somewhere. So there was just really a lot of exposure to all of this.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I was 4, we went to Nepal and they had just started tiger tops, and I met Dr. Chakma Dugal there, and, he had taken all those soon after he had taken those wonderful photographs.
Sure.
The first camera trap photographs of tigers in modern times. And I grew up with a poster of that on my walls, and this whole dream about doing the kind of work that they were doing with the Smithsonian Institute in Nepal, but in India.
Sure.
So that's really how the interest in tigers came about.
You mentioned about Kashmir, and there was a militant attack in your house.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about it? How was the experience?
Okay. So the terrorists came on the eve of Diwali, and we had about 7 or 8 staff on the property at the there. This was the largest farm within Srinagar at that time, and fruit orchards primarily. And they caught all the staff and they beat them up for working for a Hindu family. My grandparents weren't there, luckily, so they escaped. And they gunned down all the Hindu staff and threw their dabbas of mithai over their bodies and just left them there. There were 2 Muslim staff. One of them suffered permanent brain damage and never recovered. One of them subsequently recovered. And then they used incendiary bombs and burnt both the houses. So this was very horrific. And my grandparents had luckily come to Delhi for a wedding in the family. And those days, there was no mobile phones and there was none of this happening.
Sure.
And there was only Doordarshan. And we saw this on DD News, the 9 o'clock news, and it was
Very
the
sad.
headlines. And we saw the house burning and we saw all of this. And then we called Mr. Wajahat Habibullah, who was the governor at that time, and he confirmed that this had indeed happened.
That's very sad. Yeah. So
Yeah,
as a
it really shook us. And then the threats did not stop immediately. The family continued to be under threat for a long time. So my grandparents had to leave and come to Delhi, and just remain here. And I remember for a year, they wore my parents' clothes and stayed here, and until we could get them, settled in and do whatever. So it was really bad.
sure. As a woman wildlife conservationist, what kind of hurdles did you face?
Well, I don't know why, but the common perception is that you need to be somebody really tall and very masculine and very rough and tough, and you need to, wear cargo pants and khaki kurtas and, just be in the field. And I don't look like that, and I don't behave like that. So the first reaction is always, how can you do it? You can't be this person. You can't be in the field. So the first thing was to overcome that barrier, that people had to understand that I had a determination to work and I would
Sure.
stick it out in harsh conditions. And also that there was a brain. It was not just about the outward appearance. You needed to actually see what my capability was. The second hurdle was the fact that I was my father's daughter. So there was this whole thing about, oh, she's got in here because she's her father's daughter. So there was this, disbelief about capabilities. You had to work, double hard to prove that you were not only your father's daughter, but you were actually worthy of being where you are by the sheer dint of the effort that you were putting in. So you had to put in twice the effort, work longer, harder hours, come up with better ideas, and just generally prove yourself all the time.
You have said studying and photographing tigers are your pilgrimages. What makes you so passionate for the big cats?
I don't know. I think it's something I always had from childhood, but it's not just the big cats. I mean, I love the big cats. You have to choose one subject for your PhD.
Sure.
For me, it happened to be the tiger, but I love all wildlife and all of nature. I've subsequently, expanded to the big cats from all over the world. My focus is primarily carnivores for my work,
Okay.
but I've now studied marine animals. I photograph underwater. I photograph birds. I photograph landscape. So the interest goes well beyond just the big cats, but the study and my professional work has focused a lot on big mammals and especially the big carnivores.
You were awarded the title the Tiger Princess by National Geographic. Okay, what kind of role this accolade play in your field of work? Do you think it helps?
That's a tough one. I think for me personally, yes, in the global context, it was fantastic, but it also drew a lot of skepticism and unnecessary attention from the peer community in India.
Okay.
And there was a lot of jealousy and a lot of, people wanting to again say that I'm doing this work for the attention and the fame and not really because I was passionate about it. So there's both sides of the coin.
But recognized by National Geographic, I think it makes sort of sense for you to stay established in this field of work.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, internationally, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just that nationally, I did have these issues.
What role is the government playing to protect the tigers from the poachers? Okay, and how much effective is it in our country?
In the last 10 years, the government has done a lot of new steps for tiger protection. However, the attention is focused primarily within national parks, and that too more focus on the better known national parks. So the lesser known national parks with the smaller populations of tigers and all the tigers that live outside of protected areas are not getting the amount of attention that they need to get.
Sure.
Also, because of the increase in populations within national parks, because of the steps taken by the government very, very effectively, there's a spillover of populations now that go into the surrounding countryside. And this has led to an increase in human-wildlife conflict, with many people being attacked and killed by tigers and many tigers being killed constantly. There's been several well-publicized cases of man-eaters, including the one in South India, including the one called Avni that became this big conflict, Zalim in Ranthambore. So it's a very delicate situation. I would not even say it's in balance. It's just a very fragile situation, and it can really explode, but because the government is not taking enough action to deal with the reality on the ground. It's not just merely about getting the numbers up and proving to the world that you have X number of tigers. It's also about making it possible for the tigers to survive alongside humans in modern India today.
What are the reasons a tiger becomes a man-eater?
There can be endless numbers of reasons. The old reasons were it was infirmed, it was sick, it couldn't hunt its natural prey, or if it's the Sundarbans, then it thought of humans as natural prey. But more and more today, it's a case of the tigers that come out of national parks who have a shortage of natural prey, and they start man-eating because they see human beings and they accidentally attack them, understand that this is easy to do, and then continue to do that. Okay. So that's really what is happening more and more these days.
So you mentioned about humans and animal conflicts. What are the measures which we can prevent that kind of conflict?
So one is, the most obvious one is that you stop encroaching on wildlife and its areas.
Okay.
But given the fact that it's a very strongly expanding human population, and there's a huge thrust on new development projects, this becomes very, very difficult for us because animals are being restricted to small islands of space surrounded by a sea of humanity. And when the numbers of the animals increase within this space and they spill out, then they go into human occupied areas. And obviously, this is a recipe for disaster. There is almost no work being done on a large scale for the general public to make them aware of what to do if they come face to face with a wild animal. There's no training. If you remember, during the COVID lockdown, animals started coming out more in the day,
yes,
and you would see leopards everywhere and lions walking in all over the place, and people just didn't know how to react to it. So I think this is an area that is absolutely unaddressed today. It needs to be a focal area, and every government needs to take this on, and all media channels now need to have an awareness program about this. The same scale that we talk about, COVID protection, about climate change, we need to talk about human-wildlife conflict, because it's there for everyone, whether you're talking about snakes, whether you're talking about an elephant, whether you're talking about a flock of birds coming in and eating a crop. It's there everywhere, and we really do need to address this issue.
Along with tigers, which all animal species we need to conserve, according to you?
Along with tigers, which animal species?
Yes.
All. We can't afford to lose a single one. because it's a delicate balance. It's the pyramid of life. And you
Sure.
take out any of the building blocks of the pyramid of life, the pyramid becomes weak and can ultimately collapse. And we are one of the bricks in that pyramid. So you have to maintain the balance. And every species has its own role, and every animal plays its own part in the web of life.
Sure. My last question to you. What would you like to suggest young aspirants who wants to make a career in this field of work?
Okay, so it's very important that anybody who's entering this field understands that there is no immediate well-paying jobs and remuneration that comes your way. A lot of work in the beginning is very hard work, and it's all based on your passion and your need to work in the field. So anybody who enters this field, please enter it with the passion that you want to do this, because this is what drives you. The second is, this is an area where you can come up with a lot of depressing negativity, and you mustn't give up. You must always remember that for every step that you take forward, you will take a step back, but
Sure.
there is light at the end of the tunnel, and if we all work together, it will happen. So don't give up and keep on at it, and it will change. And the third is that this is one of the most fantastic areas of work. It allows you to see places and be with animals that most people would never get to do in their lives. So it's a privilege to work in this field. And I would definitely say, whatever your interest, whether it's economics or commerce or hospitality or engineering or accounting or architecture, everything is connected to the environment, and you can develop an interest through your subject, which helps with environmental conservation today.
Okay. So thank you so much for your time. It was very informative. Lovely talking to you. I wish you all the best. Thank you.